Greetings from Texas, the 28th state, which joined the Union on December 29, 1845. Today, it ranks second in population. The Lone Star flag first flew over Texas when it was an independent republic from 1836 to 1845. Why just the one star?
Under Mexico, Texas had been attached to the state of Coahuila, so it had been Coahuila and Texas. And its flag had 2 stars. So when independence came, the Texas flag had 1 to show the split.
Texans like to boast, and they'll be the first to tell you that their state was once its very own country. They may be a little murky on the history, but Texans love their state like nowhere else.
I'm just as proud as I can be, I guess. They say, where are you from? When I go anywhere, I don't say from the United States, I say I'm from Texas.
Part of that Texas pride comes from its size.
And we just kind of think big because we are big.
Bigger smiles, bigger margaritas.
Larger families, larger crowds.
Texas has a big heart.
When Texas was admitted to the Union, there was a general supposition that, in fact, it would be divided into several states. It was something of a surprise that it wasn't, and Texans got used to the idea that their state was going to be bigger than all the others, and it was something of a blow when Alaska was admitted to the Union. Texans took second place, didn't take it very well.
To the Chihuahuan deserts in the west, the State Plains, they'll drove people crazy because there were no trees and it was flat as a tabletop.
We also have Gulf Coast and the Texas Hill Country here. We have a variety of just about everything.
Much of Texas is defined by its border with Mexico. On the U.S. side, vast numbers of Mexican Americans maintain substantial bonds with Mexico, and they live bicultural and transnational lifestyles to a far greater degree than any other segment of the borderland population.
And it has helped build this community to what it is today. You'll notice in San Antonio, there's not, this rush like you'd see in New York City or East Coast. But the reality is that, there's other things that are more important to us than just getting it done real quick.
Hispanic immigrant population has contributed greatly to Texas growth. It's the only state to have 3 cities with populations exceeding 1 million: Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio.
Everything's bigger in Texas except the small towns, and that's the best thing about Texas, is definitely the small towns.
People might argue in small-town Texas about politics. They might argue about religion, but they'll all pull together behind the local football team. There's an interesting phenomenon that school districts will often break up the elementary schools. They won't break up the high schools, simply because it would pit one half of the small town against the other half of the town on Friday night.
The Texas Week really starts on Friday night because that's when all the high school football teams play. Saturday is the day that the college teams play, and you have the University of Texas, you have Texas A&M, TCU, all of these major football powers. And then on Sunday, of course, during football season, the Dallas Cowboys and the teams from down in Houston. Texans really love their sports.
There may be only one other subject that can fire up a Texan like football: barbecue. Busby's Barbecue in Bandera, Texas is among the dozens of eateries claiming to have the best barbecue in the state.
Yeah, it's called a Southern Fried Cooker. It holds about 700 pounds of meat.
There are many people who consider any form of sauce to be sacrilegious. It's simply smoke.
We use green oak. It's not dry, so that it smokes an awful lot, and where you get your flavor to the meat is with the wood.
There are people who will spend years perfecting their barbecue technique, some who will share with others, hand it down in the family, others who will take it to the grave.
All Texans like their barbecue hot, but their coolest city's got to be Austin.
I moved to Austin as soon as I could because Austin's kind of like a cultural oasis in all of Texas.
Big music town, tons of clubs, tons of bands come through here, and a lot of blues. And that's still here, it's still huge. But now Austin's kind of got a huge variety of music.
The U.S. history in Texas really began when Mexico invited groups of Americans to settle in the empty plains. 10 years later, many of those same settlers turned against their hosts and fought for independence.
And they outnumbered the Mexicans living in Texas by probably 5 or 6 to 1. They grew increasingly restive under Mexican law, and they became imbued with the notion that Texas ought to be, well, at least independent and perhaps attached to the United States. In some respects, Texas independence was what you could call a triumph for illegal immigration, because nearly all of the immigrants from the United States had come outside the rules of Mexican immigration law.
After losing San Antonio to the rebellious Texans, Mexican General Santa Anna was determined to retake this key location. In doing so, he believed he could impress upon the Texans the futility of further resistance. The showdown came at an old mission, now known as the Alamo.
The Alamo is an inspiring piece of courage and determination. But in terms of military intelligence, no, really the only thing dumber than the decision to defend the Alamo at all costs was Santa Anna's decision to take it at all costs.
46 days after the fall of the Alamo and the death of every defender, including Davy Crockett, General Sam Houston exacted revenge for Texas. His force of 910 militiamen routed 1,300 Mexican soldiers at the Battle of San Jacinto.
He pushed his army 55 miles in 2.5 days through pouring rain and mud and finished him at the Battle of San Jacinto, which only took 18 minutes. It was sort of a surprise attack, but the killing went on the rest of the day. And in fact, the Mexicans lost as many men killed as the Texans had suffered at the Alamo and Goliad and everywhere else through the entire revolution.
31 years later, rancher O.W. Wheeler invented something called the cattle drive. He moved 2,400 steers some 800 miles from San Antonio to the new railroad stockyards in Abilene, Kansas, on what became known as the Chisholm Trail. Guiding the cattle was a new breed of American, the cowboy.
That heyday of the cowboy and the great free-range cattle drives only lasted 15 or 20 years. Because when people figured out how much beef there was and how big the market was, the entire ranching industry became very heavily capitalized by outside money. And then these self-made, very independent cowboys all of a sudden became minimum wage workers.
And he was known as a light rider because a horse would last longer underneath him. He was called by everybody all over the country because he was a light rider.
At the turn of the century, an oil well called Spindletop Well No. 1 near Beaumont, Texas, blew 150 feet into the air for 9 days. It was the greatest oil discovery in U.S. history. Texas had hit the jackpot with the resource that would rule the century. By 1933, oil was so plentiful in the state that it sold for 10 cents a barrel.
Automobiles became relatively common just about the time the Texas oil industry emerged. So Henry Ford unveiled his Model T in 1908. Now this gave a huge new market for petroleum products. But of course, Ford wouldn't have developed his cars if there hadn't been oil, gasoline in particular, available.
It can't be done on the internet. A computer can't drill a well. You've got to have the same roughnecks. They're doing the same thing on a drilling platform that they've been doing for an awfully long time.
Usually people that are born in Texas die in Texas. That's the way I like to look at it.
I was born here. I was born to this land. I love everything about it. Very independent, just like these cattle.
Well, it's a big place. It's a big state, and it's a place of big dreams. It's a place where things are larger than life and where people are not afraid to make that stretch. Texans have never been afraid to dream.
Look here, I'm talking about America, sweet America.